Here you can see a diorama created with the finished trenches that TerranScapes has been working on. These trench pieces are available on the website at TerranScapes.com. And if you are interested in purchasing these or are interested in seeing any of the other terrain pieces that TerranScapes makes, you can always visit TerranScapes.com for more information. These terrain pieces, modular, there are 5 or 6, 2, 3, 4, 6 various pieces. The pieces are cast in resin with a foam backing for fill and feature a soil textured finish with gravel and a few twigs or pieces of timber, as well as a timber backing that shows heavy amount of weathering and a sandbag top. These pieces, with their various modular natures, are able to be assembled into quite a variety of trenches. And one of the things that I was very interested in this set was making a set that really felt like a trench, because it's impossible for most people to have trenches actually buried into the surface of the table. These pieces had to rise up to be taller than the head of a figure placed within them. They're designed for 28 to 30 millimeter figures. The figures that I'm showing here are AT43 figures. AT43 figures are 30 millimeter, and as a comparison, this is a 28 millimeter GW Sister of Battle, and it's a little busy background there, but you can see that the AT43 figure does stand just a pinch taller than the Warhammer 40K model does. I also noticed when the AT43 models arrived that their bases are actually a bit larger as well, which I hadn't really anticipated for, since I have built firing platforms to sit within the trench. The request for this set originally came from somebody who wanted to play these as a World War I setting, and in World War I the trenches were taller than a human standing erect, but so as able to fire over the trenches, they needed some platforms to step up onto. So I built these pieces. The firing platforms are cast in plaster. You can see some of the unpainted plaster below. It's actually Ultra Cal 30, which is a very durable plaster. It's really more like a gypsum cement, and features the same wood grain backing as the trench backs, with some wooden uprights and a couple planks on the top to sort of represent giving the soldiers or foot troops a little more support in case the soil-filled boxes got a little muddy. The pieces are designed to meet the back of the trenches, and there are some small cuts on the corners of each of these pieces so that it will fit right in between the uprights of the trench pieces. For trench pieces that have a shorter width than this, there's one piece in particular, then shorter firing platforms were created, but of course you can use them anywhere where they'll fit. When the firing platforms are in place, it does allow troops to stand on them. Actually, I'll use the 40K model here for an example since it's a little bit shorter. And you'll see in the photos on the website that when the troops are placed on the firing platform, that they can see head and shoulders above the sandbags. Actually, let's turn that around so you can see it from the model's eye view of the assaulting figures. And so it really helps to simulate that feel very well of being entrenched in and having most of your body well protected by the cover of the sandbags. One thing I did notice, however, particularly with the when the AT43 models arrived, is that I had been building these firing platforms really to accommodate a 28 millimeter base. Particularly, I've been using the 40K models as an example, since they have a nice round base, which is sort of a worst case scenario in terms of shape, and they're metal, so they're top heavy, so they seem like a good model to use. What I discovered, though, of course, is that the AT43 figures do have a slightly larger base, and so they tend to sit a little bit back on the firing platforms and can be just a tad tippy. That's remedied by pulling the firing platform away, just about a quarter of an inch. Of course, then you can snug it up a little bit better. I was, a little bit disappointed in that, in the sense that I really like the realism. I wanted these pieces to really snug up close to the trench walls, so that you really got that feel that they're built in with the troops standing on them. But it's not much of a compromise really to pull it back just a pinch, and I think in most game situations you're not really going to notice that. Other points of interest in these trench pieces is that I designed them, as I mentioned in a previous preview video, for them to have a very gradual tapering slope, so that any figures could stand on these when they're sort of assaulting the trench, or perhaps getting up to leave the trench and assault forces that they're trying to repel. This angle was designed to accommodate top-heavy 40K models in particular, which are very tippy. I can't guarantee it's going to provide stability for all models, but if you take a look at one of my other videos, you'll see some shimming ideas that I had developed for particularly tippy models, and I'd be happy to produce shims for you if you're interested, or of course you could probably produce them yourself. So the idea being that you could place troops directly on the slope as they storm the trenches, and that's something that's been lacking in a lot of the trenches that I've seen online, as they usually have too steep of an angle to really accommodate placing troops as they walk up. That does make these pieces a bit bigger than some of the trenches that are available, and that is going to be reflected in their final cost. But I'm going to work really hard to keep these at a very reasonable price so that they're available to as many people as possible. I also had a question from the previous video about how would troops exit. The person has suggested perhaps building ladders that you could lean up against the edge of the trench so that they could escape. And then I realized that if anybody wants to leave the trench, of course you could always just use the firing platform as a step and count that as anybody who's on the firing platform, could make a sort of difficult terrain movement to get out of the trench and move off. If that isn't sufficient, then another option that I thought would be possible would be to build a stacking system so that you could perhaps make an actual more of a step-like move, so that you could put, say, 2 firing platforms like that, and you could raise up one spot so that a character could make a move from the lower to the higher and then out to the trench. It's up to you, of course, how you utilize them, but I wanted to produce a set that provided enough flexibility that it could really be used for a variety of game systems, and I think that this set really achieves that, as it's perfectly suited for World War I conflict, but I think it's very usable here. You can see, even in a sci-fi setting with, one of the Goliaths from the Therians, storming the trenches, that doesn't really look that out of place, and I think it's going to provide a really dynamic terrain option for a lot of gamers, whether you play 40K or whether you play World War II or World War I historical miniatures, or any other sci-fi miniature system that would benefit from a strong cover save. So these pieces are available at TerranScapes.com, and of course when you go there and you look in the barriers section of the website, you'll be able to see some really quality close-up photos that'll show details of the backing, details of the soil texture, and a few more dioramic shots to give you some idea of how these models look like poking over the top.